On Monday, September 8th, Donald Trump spoke at the Museum of the Bible to the praise and delight of American MAGA evangelicals. And this day and this event so perfectly encapsulates the complete moral bankruptcy of these alleged Christians that I thought it was really worth offering a quick commentary on it. The irony was that on this same day that evangelicals and Trump were celebrating the Bible, another book was also released to the public. It is the book of Jeffrey Epstein's 50th birthday. And I want to look at the juxtaposition between those two books and how that illustrates the complete moral bankruptcy of evangelicals who support Donald Trump in this video. So, first of all, let's say a little bit more about how Donald Trump really loves the Bible. He was famously asked in an interview several years ago now, what was his favorite verse in the Bible? And his answer was all of them. He really loves the Bible. He loves it so much that a couple years ago he came out with his own edition of the Bible, the God Bless the USA leather-bound Bible, King James translation, which is public domain in the US, so he doesn't have to pay any money to produce these Bibles in the United States. And so he got his book and started marketing it to pious evangelicals who paid, I think, $40 to have their own leather-bound KJV Bible. And Donald Trump made $1.5 million in royalties off selling this Bible to evangelical rubes. It was so successful, in fact, that he's come out with new editions. So, for example, here is the $100 platinum edition of the Bible. So you can celebrate Donald Trump and commemorate his 45th and 47th presidencies with this Bible. Uh, I mean, to talk about the money changers in the temple, they don't got anything on Donald Trump. He will turn anything into a way to make a quick buck. May not be crypto coin. He's made several billion dollars on crypto coin since becoming president again, but still 1.5 million is nothing to sneeze at. Now let's talk about that other book. So back in July, the Wall Street Journal wrote an article in which they said that there was this drawing that Donald Trump had provided for Jeffrey Epstein's 50th birthday, and it was part of a book, and it had the drawing of the outlines of a woman. It had Donald Trump's signature as the pubic hair of the woman, and then it had this birthday um, reflection for Jeffrey Epstein, which culminated in Trump talking about all the delightful, wonderful secrets they would share together. Donald Trump was outraged and he went on to sue the Wall Street Journal for $10 billion for posting that article, saying, and he claimed that this picture doesn't even exist. There is no such picture. This is so insane on the face of it. So, first of all, the Wall Street Journal is owned by Rupert Murdoch. It is a very politically conservative newspaper. Second of all, the Wall Street Journal is one of the leaders in terms of their journalistic standards. Third, Trump is a famously litigious person. Bring all these things together. Uh, the Wall Street Journal doesn't have any interest in terms of bias to argue against conservatives or Donald Trump. And they're not going to pick a fight with the most litigious person in public life who also has, in principle, unlimited resources in terms of the money he can get for lawsuits. So one can assume they would only publish something if they had overwhelming evidence in support of its existence. Uh, Last thing to keep in mind is that Trump sues. Trump can sue. He can file a lawsuit. It doesn't mean he's ever going to carry through with that lawsuit. So it's a public relations gambit. But for Donald Trump to open himself up to discovery and to testifying under oath, he's not going to do that. So I think at the outset, we knew the lawsuit itself would never go anywhere. Regardless, on Monday, the actual image was released. It was released because Democrats made a Freedom of Information request to Jeffrey Epstein's estate, and the estate obliged by releasing the book to the public. And this is the image that allegedly Donald Trump wrote and submitted for Jeffrey Epstein's 50th birthday with his signature standing in for pubic hair. I just want to conclude with the last sentences here. It says, "A pal is a wonderful thing. Happy birthday, and may every day be another wonderful secret." What's he referring to here? Hmm. Well, Donald Trump was best friends with Jeffrey Epstein throughout the 1990s and into the 2000s. So, and if you read through this book, it quickly becomes clear uh, that Donald Trump is a prominent person in this book and in Jeffrey Epstein's life. And I want to talk about that. But first, I want to look at all the people who are trying to dismiss this. So, of course, there's a humorous cartoon, somebody trying to attribute it to Obama. If not Obama, maybe the next thing will be Hunter Biden's laptop or maybe Hillary Clinton. Of course, one of the responses has been, well, it's a forgery. And it's a forgery because people say, look at Donald Trump's signature on the bottom here, and it doesn't match the signature at the bottom of the drawing. Well, actually, they're pretty close. But a couple things to keep in mind. First of all, the bottom signature is a formal signature that Donald Trump has used in his presidency, which includes both his first and last name. The top signature or the signature on the drawing is just the name Donald, which he would regularly sign as well. And so here's from the BBC comparing a message from the signature at the bottom of the drawing with another signature from 2002, where Trump was just signing his first name Donald. And there are actually multiple other cases like this. This is not a forgery. These signatures, no, I'm not a handwriting expert, a graphologist, but I can say as a layperson, I think any reasonable person can say these signatures look very alike. And there's a complete absence of what we would call the forger's tremor. So a person that's drawing very slowly and trying to capture the signature, there's often going to be a little tremor as they're trying to mimic the signature. That's completely absent. This just looks like it was just scrolled off. Also, just think about the absurdity of what is being proposed here. That in 2003, somebody forged Trump's signature and submitted this falsely to Ghislaine Maxwell, who was the one who collated all of these birthday wishes. And then it was put into the book falsely and attributed to Trump at that time. It's just an absurd claim. To what end? Why was somebody doing this? No explanation for that has been given. Again, Trump was best friends with Epstein throughout this time, and Trump is prominently displayed in other places in the book, particularly in this reference. So, in the birthday book to Jeff Epstein, there is also this large check written to Epstein. Now, clearly, the signature on here, Donald Trump, is not Trump's signature. There's no claim that it is. However, it is a check which is explained more fully in the handwriting that goes with the image on the page that this is $22,500 being paid by Trump to Epstein for a devalued woman or female that Epstein has been using, who he is then selling to Trump like a used car. Here's the question. Why would this be included as some sort of joke referencing Trump if Trump had no involvement with Epstein or no awareness of Epstein's sexual proclivities? Doesn't make any sense. The whole point that this would be included as a joking reference to Donald Trump shows that Trump was up to his neck in whatever Epstein was doing. The other thing to just appreciate as you go through the book, it is full of people making birthday wishes like this one. Here is a picture someone drew for Epstein. It shows him in 1983 giving candy and balloons to little girls to attract them to come to him. 20 years later, it shows him relaxing on the beach, being massaged by four females. We don't know what their ages are. One of them's massaging his feet and she's topless. Another one is topless and she appears to be performing a sex act on him. And in the background, you see Epstein's plane, which was known as the Lolita Express, obviously a reference to the infamous book Lolita, which talks about a pedophile and his grooming and sexual assault of a victim. And multiple of these birthday well wishes are like this. They're celebrating Epstein's sexual activities in exploiting young girls, sexually assaulting young girls. One of the birthday wishes talks about how Epstein has avoided the penitentiary. So people clearly knew what he was doing. And as I've heard pundits observe, what's so extraordinary about this is most people, if they have a 50th birthday, people are going to celebrate their accolades, like what they've done in their career, all their achievements they've made, their hobbies, and so on. All of these birthday wishes, or almost all of them, are acknowledging, referencing, making lewd comments about Epstein's sexual life, particularly his focus and obsession on young girls. Trump himself gave an interview talking about his good friend Epstein about the same time, about the early 2000s, where he talked about he really loves young women, quote unquote, women. Trump, of course, himself is known for his omnivorous sexual appetite, including boasting about going into the teen Miss USA pageant into the dressing room so he could see the minor girls in various states of nakedness. When his daughter Ivanka was 17, he talked about her sexual attractiveness, and if he wasn't married and she wasn't his daughter, that he might be dating her. So then we come back to this image, and again to the words of Donald Trump: Happy birthday, and may every day be another wonderful secret. What do you think he's referring to here? Why is he referring to wonderful secrets? What has to be kept a secret? Uh, is there not very strong circumstantial evidence that what Trump is saying here is, first of all, that yes, he wrote this and gave it to Epstein 22 years ago? And second, he is nodding and winking about Epstein's sexual actions in sexually assaulting, grooming children, trafficking in children. Trump appears to be very much aware of this. We don't know what more Trump is aware of, but now we come back to the fact that he is continuing to refuse to release any Epstein documents himself. His Department of Justice has all of these documents and he refuses to release them. Why is that? One of the lawyers of 200 of the women that were sexually assaulted and abused by Epstein in their youth, one of the lawyers of 200 of those women was interviewed last week on CNN, and he made a very important point, which I think is a very reasonable take. He says, first of all, in his knowledge, he doesn't know about Trump having participated in any of these actions from the 200 women that he has represented, but there are hundreds of others of women that were sexually abused by Epstein. But the other thing he says is he believes the only reason that Trump would have to cover up the Epstein files and refuse to release them is because Trump is implicated within them and has been notified as such by the Department of Justice. And I believe that is the most reasonable conclusion, which means further evidence that just as Trump was found liable on the balance of probabilities to have sexually abused E. Jean Carroll by forcibly inserting his fingers into her vagina in the mid 1990s, just as he has been credibly accused by more than 24 other women of having been sexually assaulted, having sexually assaulted them, just as he bragged 9 years ago, we became aware in the notorious video that he bragged about grabbing women by their genitals. So here we have further evidence that Trump has been complicit in the sexual predation of vulnerable females, arguably likely some of them minors. Pedophilic behavior, the pedo president. That's kind of what you're looking at here. So we go back to evangelicals celebrating Trump speaking at the Museum of the Bible on Monday, the same day that this book was released to the world. And that so perfectly encapsulates the utterly morally grotesque witness of these bankrupt, morally bankrupt, conservative, MAGA supporting evangelicals. I thought that was very much well worth a commentary for the contrast and the irony of these two books on Monday, September 8th.